Alright, today we're going to be looking at completely taking apart a set of the first gen Hitachis. Now this is off a 920. Now I don't know anything about these carbs because they came off a bike that a shed had collapsed over the top of, and so there wasn't much left of the bike, but the motor was in pretty good shape. But it had been sitting for years and years and years, and so these things were stopped up completely and just totally gummed up. So I've been playing with them for a little bit, and I have managed to get the slides broke free. So the slides are free now, and I got the butterflies broke free. So a couple of days of WD-40 and choke carb cleaner, and then the chem dip stuff, and I've managed to get most everything freed up. So even the choke circuit's working, everything is moving. So now I'm going to take them back apart. So what I did to put them in the chem dip, I didn't dip the whole carburetor in there because you don't want to mess up your seals, especially these little seals right here. If you put them down in the chem dip, it'll swell them, and then you're going to have air leaks. So we got to take these off anyway because I don't know about these carbs. Somebody may have done that in the past and ruined them, and so I don't want to put them on the bike only to find out I got a lot of air leaks coming on these. So I'm going to take these completely apart in this video, and you'll see how to completely disassemble a set of Hitachi carbs. Let's get set up here, and we're going to start with the first one, which is the hardest when splitting the two, is you got to get the butterflies out. And it's really tricky, so we'll get the camera set up and I'll show you how to do it, so you'll be pretty successful in getting that one done. Then we'll work our way on around. Alright, so since I'm going to split these carbs, like I say, I don't know anything about them, so I'm going to go ahead and check everything. Now these little seals in here are really hard to find, and I can't find them anymore, but I got me a site that I ordered some from that look like they're going to fit. May have to modify them a little bit, but if I get those, I'll put them out on eBay as well with all the other stuff that I sell, and you'll be able to get these new little seals that go inside of here. But normally, if they're my carbs and I know about the carbs, the history of them, I don't take the carbs apart, I don't split them. But in this case, since I don't know anything about them, I'm going to go ahead and split them apart, and we're going to check everything on the carbs to make sure that these are good. So step one in getting these butterflies off, and you really only get one chance at this mainly, is to get this thing so that it sits real still. Because if you try to take a screwdriver and just hold it and do it, you're probably going to strip these little guys out. So first thing you need to do is get you a clamp or something, and we're going to clamp it to the table because you want to be as stable as possible with getting these guys out. So I'm going to put a clamp on it right there, and I'm going to clamp underneath the table. That way the carburetors are nice and tight. Now they do move. They're going to move on me because they flip back and forth, but I can hold on to that while I'm turning the screw. So next step, if you look right here real close on the screwdriver, now this is my special little screwdriver that just fits these things, and you can see the screwdriver you want to use needs to be a really good one, needs to be a nice flat tip on it, but it also helps to have these little serrations across the ends of it because they're going to help to grip. And when you put it in there, you want to make sure that it fits tight. Like it almost fits in there and it wants to go in there, but it's just a little bit tight, because what we want to do is actually thump it, and we're going to put it down as low as we can get it into that screw. Now all you got to do is, with the carburetor held down to the table, you hold tight on the lever so it doesn't tip, and then you push as hard as you possibly can, and you give it a crank. And like I say, you only get one chance on this, but they'll move most of the time. Now you can't do it with the Phillips head or the Japanese one because it's just going to strip right out. So it's always best to use the flat, and then we can get those guys out. So starting with that, it's going to let you know whether or not you're going to be able to separate these two carburetors. If somebody has tried and they've ruined it, then you're not going to be able to take the two carburetors apart unless you drill these out. But most times, if you work really, really hard, you can get these guys out just like that. So there is my little screw. And so now you can see it's all nasty, but I was able to get it out of there. But I'm not going to take these out yet. What I want to do is loosen them up while these carburetors are still solid. That way I know for sure I can get them out. I'm going to take the carburetors apart. Then when I get ready to separate them, I'll take those screws out and take the butterflies out. So we'll do that at the last. But step one of the whole thing is to see if you can get these little guys out. So we'll do the second one. And just make sure, like I say, you want to have a super tight screwdriver, and then you push down as hard as you can. Hold your little lever so it doesn't tip on you. And you crank. And most times, with the right screwdriver, you're going to get them out of there. So we got the second one out as well. And then we'll be ready to do some disassembly. So I'll flip it over and I'll do the other side too. Then we'll know we got both sides on the butterflies are good, so I can split these things apart. So first off, to get it to flip over, I got to take these tubes off. Have it something to sit on, so I'm going to pull these tubes. Now one thing you'll notice on the back right here on the first gens, it has an R for the rear carb and an F for the front. So over here on my paper, I got an R for the rear and an F for the front. So every time I take something off of the different carburetors, I'm going to put it over here. So this is the front carb, so I'm going to put that little tube right there. This is the one for the rear carb, and so we're going to put that one over on the rear. And that way, as you're taking it apart, keep everything consistent, because some things like the emulsion tubes and other little things on it may be different between the two carbs, front and back. You want to make sure you don't mix them up, because you want to put them back together the same way they came apart. And it also helps, because they want to twist a little bit when you're having to crank on them, it also helps to have another clamp back behind it over here. So just find some place you can put that clamp that'll keep it from spinning around, and then you'll keep your carburetors from turning as you're trying to twist on that little screw. So here we go for our second ones. Alright, so it looks like we're good to go to be able to take the carburetors apart, because we got those butterfly screws loose. So we're in good shape there. So now let's set up and we'll start disassembling the carburetor, and I'll put it in another little vise here. That way it makes it easier to hold. And I usually start at the top, go ahead and pull the diaphragms and things out, but you can start any way you want to. Alright, so with the hard part out of the way on determining if we can get the butterflies out, now we can get this guy up here and do some work on him. So, what I want to do is hook it up in a vise here, and there's a tab on the bottom. So it works out pretty good, but if you just try to use the tab by itself, it won't stay up there. So what you got to do is stick like an Allen wrench back behind the tab. That way you got something to pinch on. And then you can pinch the tab together and it'll tighten up on it. So let's start with the top. We got it locked down good. And so all we need to do is take the top parts off. So this is pretty easy. Some of these are hard to do. I've already loosened them up a little bit. But they have the JIC, and then they also have the flat. So if you struggle, most time you can get them with one of the two, or if you really struggle, then you can take a pair of little needle nose and you can grab these guys and pinch on them and then break them loose. And so that's an easy way to do it too, because the walls of the little screw are flat. But we got ours broke free, so now we just want to take these tops off and we're going to pull the diaphragms out. So just keep up with everything. This is my rear. This is the front, so we're going to go in order, and we're just going to keep stacking stuff over here. Now anything that joins in the middle, I'm going to put in the middle on the paper. And then we can pull our cap off. So you can see that it's that simple. This is the easy part, so we just take our cap and our spring, and we put those guys over there, and we're going to clean all of this up, but first we got to get it apart. So now what you want to do is reach up with your finger and push up on your slide, and a lot of times that diaphragm will pop right out of there. If not, you'll have to take something and peel it off of it, being very careful. So there we go. So this is in pretty good shape. Like I say, the carbs weren't used much. The bike was just buried under a shed, and so you inspect that, make sure there's not any holes. If there are some holes, you're going to have to replace these, which is a whole fiasco of a thing to try to do with some aftermarket ones. So hopefully you don't have any holes. I don't see any holes. You can hold it up to the light and verify that you don't have any holes. If you had a little bitty pinhole, you can also get some like rubber cement. It's like a two-part made by 3M. Just mix up a tiny little bit and just dab it right into where the pinhole is, and you'll be in good shape. So then we just want to collapse them down a little bit, and we're going to set them on the table. So now we got that out of the way. Let's do the other one, and then we'll look at how to get that crossover tube out for some of the very first gen Hitachis. Alright, so next up what we got is the choke plunger thing. Now these wiggled on them and I can get them to move, so that's good. But we'll go ahead and take this little linkage off. Now you don't have to separate it on the pins and things. Just take the 2 screws out. You'll see 2 screws there, 2 screws here, and you can take the linkage off and then just set it on the table over there. So a lot easier than having to pull the pins and things. And these come off pretty easy. You got to push on them a little bit to get them to break free, but they're usually not that bad. If they are, then you'll have to do the same thing with getting a really good flat screwdriver and pulling them out. But those guys come out pretty easy. So let's get those out. There. So that one's off. Now we just got to do the other side. There we go. So with the 4 screws out, all you do is just raise up the linkage, and see, you can leave it together. That way it's a lot easier to deal with. That way you don't have to deal with the springs and things. You just put them back in there. So we'll set that right in the middle. And now we can work on getting the plungers out. And I'll show you something that goes wrong with these plungers that you're going to need to check to make sure that they work good. So got to get you a 17 millimeter and put it on your little plunger guy. And then get you a hammer or something, because these are pretty tight. And so we get a hammer and we thump those loose. Now we can pull the choke plungers out. So as we look at each piece, when I take it off, I'll show you some critical things about it. So there's the choke plunger, and as you can see, it's just a little cap. It's got a spring. There's a little disc right below it. So if you see the order of it, there's the cap, there's the spring, there's a little bitty disc right there that comes up. You can see that, and that's how it goes together. This part at the bottom you don't deal with. But what I wanted to show you is that for the choke circuit, it's actually 2 pieces. This blocks off the fuel, this blocks off the air, and they have to move. So you can see this one moves, if you look at that. So you want to clean them and make sure that that little plunger right there can move in between, because one blocks off the fuel, one blocks off the air. If that little guy is stuck, it's not going to block the air off correctly, or it's not going to let it lower down to block off the fuel, and the carb's not going to run right. So that one's really critical. Doesn't seem like it should be, but it is for the choke circuit to make sure that little guy's working. So this is the front. So we're going to put him over here. Let's see what the other one looks like. Whoa, this one's nasty. So you can see that it's all kind of stuck together. So I got to get it apart and get it cleaned. So we'll clean all that up with the Chem Dip. But this one is still barely moving, and that's not moving very good. So get a little carb cleaner, and we're going to spray it on it just to see if we can loosen it up and get it so it'll retract good. So there we go. It was just dirty. So now it's retracting good. The tips look good. They're going to seal off good. They're still there. So that's good. So now this one's working. And we're going to dip him and clean him all up, but at least we know that it's functioning. So we'll put him over here. Alright, so we're almost done at the top, but we got these little crossover tubes that are inside of here. So let me spin it around, and I'll show you how to get one of these crossover tubes out. Alright, so for the crossover tube that's in there, this is a little trick that I've learned along the way. So first you got to get the little bolt out, because you got to check the 2 air jets that are there. Now I've already loosened that up a little bit just to make sure it was going to come off there. But if they're really nasty, like this carburetor here, now you got that guy, he's got to get Chem dipped, and I'm dealing with the rear carb, so over here on this side. And then there's a little spring that's in there, so you got to get the little spring out. But now you're faced with getting that tube out of there. Well, there's not a good way up top to grab that tube, but if you have a set, or go get a set of these little screw extractors, one of the bigger ones that says a number 5 right here. This guy is what you need to get those out. So all you got to do is just slip that down in there, because you're not worried about damaging the inside of the tube. You don't want to mess up the outside of the tube because it's not going to go in there. But you take that little extractor tool and you can put it down in there and then spin it. And try to spin it to see if you can see that that is spinning. And if it's all nasty like these, put a little carb cleaner in there and you can get it rotating. Then you just slowly spin that guy out of there. And there you go. So even nasty, that one came out, and then all you got to do is wiggle it and it'll pop off your screw extractor. So that's a really easy way to get these crossover tubes out, because there's 2 air jets underneath them that you're going to have to clean out. And we'll talk about those in just a minute. So this is my rear, so it's going over here. Now we just got to spin around and do the same thing for the front. So you can see that one was nasty as well. So we're going to clean all of that up. So then there's our rear. And that's pretty much up top, except for, I'm just spinning around so you can see, because I'm going to take it back out of the vise now, except for the 2 jets that are in there. Now there's 2 jets that hide down inside of there. You got the big one in the front and you got the smaller one in the middle. Now you can try to take those out, but I've never been very successful at getting those out because they are stuck in there. So the easiest thing to do is just to clean them down in there, and we'll get a piece of wire. I'll show you some wire here in just a second that you can use, but clean those little guys out after you soak them. We're going to go ahead, once we disassemble everything, get all the rubber pieces off. We're going to soak these carbs and see if we can't get all these jets cleaned out without taking those out. You can try to take them out, but if you booger them up, you're done. There's no way to get them back out of there once they're messed up. So for me, the best thing to do is just leave those 2 jets in there, and just note that the big one is in the front and the little one is in the middle, and you should be in good shape. Alright, so now we're ready to flip over onto its backside, so we don't need our little vise anymore because we got something to set on. And like I say, I'm going to soak all these so they're just nasty as can be, as you can see. So now we'll flip over to the backside and we'll take the bowls off, get all that took out, then we can start soaking some stuff and see what's going on with these carburetors. Alright, so on to the bottom of the carburetors. Now you can use the same little screwdriver here. We're going to take out the idle air control. Now if these are tight, you can spray some carb cleaner down in there and try to get them to loosen up a little bit. So you just keep cranking until you hear it tick, then you'll know it's off its thread. And then you just grab you a set of tweezers and you pull it out. So those are nasty as well. You can see this thing, and this is my front carb. And so right there goes the front piece for the front carb. Then, if the spring didn't come out, there's a spring that sits in there. This one's stuck to it. So if the spring didn't come out, you'll have to fish that little spring out. But there's no O-ring on the bottom of the first gens. The O-ring's up on top. So you don't have to worry about an O-ring or a little tiny washer in there. It doesn't have them on this one. So then we take those 2 guys out. So that one came out, but there's no spring. So we got to reach in there, get your tweezers, and it's actually, instead of trying to grab it, just put your tweezers inside the spring and let them expand, and it'll pull the spring out for you. So then you got the spring out. So we got that. So next up, we're going to go to the bowl because we got everything cleaned off. While you're at it, you can try to get the drains out while you're still got something solid. And like I say, I've had these bowls off because they were so full. I wanted to see if I could even do anything with these carbs. So the bowls are actually pretty clean now, but you can see all the rest of the stuff is stuck in there. Alright, so now we're just going to take the bowls off. The bowl comes off with these 4 little screws. We're going to leave all this set as it is. We'll adjust that when we do some sinking. There's no need to take all that off. Alright, so now if the bowl is stuck, those 4 screws is all that holds it on there. So let's say it's stuck, mine's free, but you can thump on it and get it to break free, and then you can take the bowl off. And you can see I've already been cleaning on it, but I haven't cleaned out this little hole right here, and it is super critical to make these run right, is there's a tiny little drilling that goes from here to here. we're going to soak them, and then we're going to try to clean that out and make sure. But you have to have that cleaned out because that's what gives the fuel up to the choke circuit. Without that, it's not going to run right because it's not getting the right fuel. So we got our bowl off. So we'll just go ahead and take the other one off while we're at it. And you just keep looking right there. There's the R. So I know this is rear. And so I'm going to set him on the rear. We'll do the same for the front. We'll go ahead and get the bowls off. Alright, so we got our bowls off now. So now we got to get the floats. And as you can see, these floats are stuck. I have been soaking them, but they're still stuck in there. So I'm going to go get the floats off. But you got to knock that pin out. And it'll go one way or the other, but it won't usually go both ways. But the way to get it out of there is get like a tiny little screwdriver. And usually the side that's the farthest sticking out is the one that'll go back. So you just want to hit it on the center. If you just thump it on this flat, you're probably going to ruin it. But most time these will come out. Even this really, really gummy carb there, they were able to come out. And so I can pull the pin. And so this is the rear. We're going to put that there. Now, as you can see, my floats are pretty clean, but the little shut-off, the little block-off valve is actually stuck in there on this one. So I'm going to have to replace that anyway. You get you a new kit, and you'll replace that little thing. So all I'm going to do is just pull up on it and get it out from underneath of the little spring that's holding it in there. You might have to move the little spring out of the way, like that. So I'm actually going to keep these floats. These are OE floats, and as long as they're not cracked or anything, and I'll float them and make sure. But there doesn't sound like there's anything in them, so I'm going to clean these up and keep them. That way I don't have to worry about aftermarket floats being bad, because the floats don't usually go bad. It's just this little guy right here gets replaced. So we'll take the floats out of both. Like I say, you have to thump very carefully if those pins won't come out. You have to thump on them in the center with a tiny little screwdriver and see if you can get them out. But if they go one way, they won't go the other. Turn it around and try to get those pins out. So now we got that pin out. Same thing with this one. It's stuck. So I'm just going to have to get it over the springs there. Normally you wouldn't have to do this, except for this is just really stuck in there. See, that little spring thing actually came with it, but I don't care. It comes as a replacement for the kit. Alright, so next up would be the little block off. So for that you got to get a 10 millimeter. I thought I had a 10 millimeter, so here's a 10 millimeter. So all you want to do is put it on that. Sometimes they're tight, but you can push on them and they'll come free. And it helps to have a thin wall 10 millimeter to fit in there, because we're going to replace that out when we get our new kit. And so he comes out. There's also a washer, so be careful. The washer you're probably going to have to reuse. And then there's also a screen on the back. Typically you'll see this little screen. If, when you pull it out, you don't have a screen, you want to fish around down in there and try to see if there's a little screen that's supposed to be on there. But we're going to save that. Let's go over here and do the other one. Because when you put your new one on there, you're going to have to set your fuel height, because this is going to be different. This little washer may be thicker, thinner, you don't know. But it looks like my screens came out for both of them, so that's good. So there we go. So now all we got in the bottom is the gaskets, which didn't come out with these. So the gasket was stuck. There's the gasket. Then all we got left down here pretty much is the jets. Now these jets I've been looking at. Now this is where you run into problems with old jets. Now there's nothing wrong with these jets, they're just really nasty. So I'm going to take some wire, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But I'm going to soak them first, and then I'll take a piece of wire and run it through there and get all the cruddies out and get it all back to where they're the right size. But if you look, the main jet is the one that connects to the emulsion tube. The idle jet is the one that's by himself. So the emulsion tube one always has a washer right here. And let me show you another trick on how to get the emulsion tube out if it's stuck in there like it's probably stuck in there on these. So now we've got to get a really wide screwdriver, something that we can get a hold of these jets. And you can play with them a little bit, but most time, if you crank on them, they'll pop free. So we're going to get these jets loose right there. So like I say, the idle jet is the little one. It's like a 41 on these. It's got a tiny hole. We're going to clean those up. I could get new jets if I just can't get them cleaned up, but most time they're just nasty, and you just got to get them cleaned out, run some wire down through there. Now for the main jet, when you pull it out, it's got a washer. And so it's the larger hole jet. It's like a 122, 120 something. But if your emulsion tube is stuck in there, what you can do is the jet is actually the same diameter as the hole for the emulsion tube. Now, you do want to take something and make sure there's no burrs on it. So I'm going to get a little tiny file, and I'm going to file around on that outside of that jet, make it clean. Then I'll show you how to pop that emulsion tube out. Alright, so just to make sure it fits in there, there's no burrs on it, what you want to do is just run around the outside with a file, because you might have made a little burr on it when you were getting it out with a screwdriver, and it's not going to fit in there. So just want to make sure there's no burrs on the outside of the main jet, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So there we go. So we got him deburred. Now what I did is I took the washer off. And so here's the washer that normally goes on there that holds it. So you take the washer off and just crank the jet back in there on the main. Like this right here. And because the diameter is the same, once you got it tightened down to the emulsion tube, all you got to do is just take something and gently tap on the jet, and you can knock it down in there, and what it does, it actually knocks the emulsion tube all the way down. So you heard it hit the table right there. So what you get is a super nasty emulsion tube that has to have all these little holes cleaned out, and these are different front to back, so you really got to keep up with which one is which. This is the rear, but what I got now, see, I can just back my little main jet back off, and there's my emulsion tube. So super simple, even though it was just jank nasty right here, just be able to pump that thing out of there. And like I say, I'm on my rear carb, so it goes to the rear over here, and then I'll put my washer back on my main just to remind me which one's which until I go to clean it. So we'll spin it around and we'll do the same thing for the fronts. So we're pretty much there. We don't have a lot more to take off on the bottom down here. Everything looks really good here. All of these surfaces look good. So I think we'll be able to clean it up, but we got to soak them for a while. So next up, I got to get them split apart. And that's where we loosened up the butterflies right here so we can split them apart. So let's get set up, get the linkages off of them. I'll show you how to do that. You don't have to take this linkage apart. You just have to take the ends off, and then we can slide the carburetors away from each other. So let's get set up, do that real quick. Then we'll be ready to soak these carbs. Alright, so with everything off the top and everything off the bottom, it's time to split the carbs. So what we want to start with is our little butterflies. Now we already loosened the screws up. That was a first step just to make sure we could split them. Now I normally, like I say, I don't split them if they're my carbs because I know those seals are probably good. I bench synced them, and then when I did a running sync, if they were still pretty close together, I know I don't have any leaks. But since I don't know these carbs, I'm going to take them fully apart, and I'm going to replace those little guys as well, or at a minimum check them to make sure that the seals are still good and the lips are still on them. But step one when it comes to splitting the carbs is to go ahead and take the butterflies out. But don't confuse yourself when it comes to putting them back together. You'll need to mark them. And so this is the rear carb, and so what I'm going to do is put an arrow to designate up. I can get a marker that marks. Try this marker. So I'm going to designate up with the arrow, and I'm going to designate this as the rear. So an R with an up, and we'll put it on there a couple times. And when I wash them, I'm going to have to wash them and then put my markings back. But it's important to know which way's up and also which way's out. So what I marked on is going to be the out, and then I got to know it's the rear because you want to keep everything the same as you're putting it in there. So I got it marked up and rear. So now what I want to do is actually take the butterfly out. So we get our handy dandy screwdriver, and we take our screws loose that we already loosened up, And if they fall in there, it's no big deal. They're not going anywhere. There's the other. And we're dealing with the rear, so we're going to go over and put them with the rear parts. Now what you want to do is tip the butterfly up. And you may have to tip it from the front carb, because that's the driving carb. So now the butterfly is forward. We got it marked. All you do is grab the butterfly and pull it straight out. And as simple as that, we got our butterfly out. And we're still marked rear carb. This is up, so we're going to know that's the way it goes in there when we get ready to reinstall. So we got that one out. So now let's flip over here and do the same over on this side. And there you go. So there's our front butterfly. So now we don't have anything standing in our way to pull the shafts out. And so now we can take the sides off and take the centers out, and we can split them apart. Now there's one thing on top when you're putting them together. You got to make sure that you lock this tab up top back in when you take this bottom frame off and then you start your reassembly. You got to have that tab in. But while I got it sitting here, we go ahead and get us a 12mm, and we're going to take the bolt loose. Now look at the spring. The spring sits with the curl to the inside on top of the post. The bottom part of the spring is down there on the tab, and so you'll want to note the orientation of that. And these usually come off pretty easy. Now with the butterflies not in there, you don't have any risk of knuckle dragging on it. You can push this up a little bit to hold the lever, and then you don't have to worry about bending anything. So now we pull those loose, and normally they're not on there very tight. And so we're still dealing with the front carb over here. I still got my plate on there to tell me. And so now I can take the screw off, or the nut off. So it's the nut and the washer, and then it's the plate. And so the plate is spring loaded, so you want to grab your link and you can pull up a little bit. You might have to wiggle on it some because these don't come off that often. But once you get it moving, then you can twist the spring and get it to unhook from the tab down there. And you see it only goes a quarter turn, so you don't have to do double on it. When you put it back on there, put the curl up on the post, put this on partially, take your thumbnail, and you got to pop it back around. So it only has about a quarter of a turn, like that. And see, then you put it back on there. So just loosen that guy up. Now you can take that guy off and just keep it in order. And then there's going to be the big spring, and then there's a washer that goes back behind the plate and the spring, and then there should be a seal inside of there. Now this is looking pretty nasty, so that seal may be kind of nasty, but that's all it takes right there to get this carb split off the side. So now we could either go over to the other side and we could do the very same thing, or we could take this loose and slide this carb off. But while they're together, I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. So this is the rear carb, because this is the little locker. So now I don't have my butterflies in there. I'm sitting down on the stop, so I don't have to worry about bending anything. And so we do the very same thing. And then you got the plate. And so at this point you can take your spring and move it around a little bit. It won't quite come off till you move it out some. But you gotta move that little flapper out a little bit. That's where you just gotta pry on it. Now with it moved out a little bit, you can take the spring loose, and then the plate comes off, and then the spring comes off, and then the little disc comes off. And there you go. So we'll soak all of that. That one's loose now. As you can see, it'll move back and forth. And there's probably a seal in there. So hopefully, yeah, you can see the seal. I can zoom in there and you can see that that seal is ruined. So it's probably good that I'm taking this apart, because as you can see, if I zoom down in there, right there, you can see that seal is destroyed. So it should be a nice round little seal. It's kind of a janked up seal. So this would have been a big problem with these carburetors, that I would have had an issue if I tried to put them back together without checking these seals, that I'm going to run into air leaks. So it's a good thing we're taking them apart. Alright, so now, last on the list here to split them apart is to take this plate loose. Now these guys are on there tight, but they're nice, big-headed little boogers, so you can grab them with a pair of needle nose vice grips most time and give them a little twist, and a lot of times they'll come free. You can see they came free. So now we're working on our rear carb. So let's get our screwdriver. The other thing you can do is if you have a really big JIS screwdriver, a Phillips head doesn't quite fit it, but a JIS fits really well. I think because these are Japanese screws. You can take those screws loose really easy. So this is the rear carb, and like I say, you'll note that although I've done this 50 times, I always verify each time I take a part off which carb I'm working on. That way everything goes back together like it ought to go back together. So now we got our plate loose. Now the whole carb is loose. So I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to take the other plate off while I'm taking plates loose. But as soon as I split these two carbs, you're going to be wondering, okay, which carb is which? Then you're going to be confused. Well, before I take the screws out, let me show you the easy way to know on a first gen which carb is which. And as you can see, when you put it together, you got to make sure you get those little guys lined up top up here. Those little pins right there, those got to line up. So how do I know which carb is which? Well, this is the front carb because I hadn't took the plate off. This is the rear carb. The easiest way to tell is look at the tubes. The rear carb is going to be a straight tube coming out. The front carb is going to be an angled tube. So you always know this is your front carb because it's got an angled tube on it. This is the rear carb, it's got a straight. So that's the way you'll know, or you can mark it if you wanted to, but it's really easy to tell once you see those tubes. You'll know which carb is which. Alright, so dealing with the front, so we put our screws for the front, and then now this whole plate comes off. We got to inspect that roller in there, make sure that roller is good. May have to shim it or replace it with something, but that's all that rides inside of there. So when you put it all together, you'll put the carbs back together. Make sure that you got the front carb with the angle plate, slip that back up on there, and then you'll bolt it back together. So it's really easy to do. And that guy goes in the middle because he's a middle part. So now, all we got to do is carefully, and you can leave this mechanism together, just note which way it goes because it gets kind of wiggly. So if I hold the carbs back together, this roller should be on the bottom, right in between the carbs, and the screw needs to be on the side with the tubes. And so it'll sit like that right there once you're done. If it gets all out of wacky once you put it together, note which way it goes because it'll be impossible to put it together if you get that linkage crooked. So we just want to lay the carbs out, and now we should be able to carefully wiggle our butterfly pins out. Like I say, we already saw that this one was pretty janky, so it's a good idea I'm doing this and get this thing split apart. That way I can get those seals replaced because those seals were wrecky. And there we go. And if you had to, you could spray a little carb cleaner on there to get rid of any of that nasty, and they'll slide out of there a little bit better. So there we go. So which carb is this? If we look at the angle, this is the front carb, and so he goes over into the front carb side. This linkage goes like this, so this is the front carb's linkage. You could mark it if you want to, because it doesn't look any different once you take it off. So if you want to be safe, you can just mark it somehow with front and rear just to make sure you get it back together. So instead of marking on it, because I'm going to clean it up, I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm just going to tape on that one as the front That way I know which way it goes. As the front. So that's the front side. Now, flip the whole thing over, and we can do the rear. We know this is the rear because this is the tube coming up. There is the super janky, what's left of the super janky little seal. Right there, you can see. So this would have caused me major headaches on this carburetor because that seal is toast. And it would have been leaking like a sieve, and we would have had so many problems out of these carburetors. So, give it a little bit of squirt with some carb cleaner. And then we'll slide that guy off. We got it marked as front over here, but I'll mark it as rear over there. That way I can take the tape off, clean each side, and then put the tape back on. And as you can see, there's another washer on this side. So we'll have to clean all of that up, get all those washers freed back up. It's like a little plastic washer. There's one over here and what's left of the seal over on that side. And we got our carbs took apart. So there you go. Other than this little guy right here, which I'm just going to leave on there. You could take it off if you wanted to. That's pretty much it. So there is the stripped carb with nothing else on it. So what we got to do now is, you can see the seals are gone. So I'm going to have to get new seals for here anyway. So I'm just going to take those seals out, and then I'm going to soak this whole thing because there's no rubber left on it anywhere. And there's no issue with something deteriorating the rubber like these had done over the years. Somebody had chem dipped them or something. But now we got all of that, we can see things. So you can see down inside of there. If I hold the light right, you can see the jets. So there's the little jet and the big jet. We're not going to take those out because they're really hard. You'll mess them up and then you've ruined your carburetors. We're just going to clean them with some wire. So let's get set up over here and we'll look and see how to clean some of these things. Then I'm going to soak them, and then I'll come back and then we'll do a reassembly.